Well, hello everyone. It's Reimmerse. We made it 1 full year. Um, it actually feels a little crazy to say that. If you remember watching the first video, it was kind of questionable if we would ever make it this far, but um, I feel really good to have stuck with it for so long. So for this video, I have a lot of notes prepared. I actually wrote down the most I have of any month so far. And so I'm gonna have chapters in the description and timestamps on the YouTube play bar for you. I would say if you're short on time, I'm gonna talk about my kind of assessment of my level and goals at the very end. So I'll definitely have a chapter for that. So if you just want to skip ahead to that, feel free to do that. But I'm just gonna get straight into it. So this month I kind of just been continuing what I've been working on, which is mostly immersion, and I feel really good. I feel really good. I wanted to look back at kind of the refold guide and kind of reassess where I'm at. There's this interesting page in the stage 2 articles called levels of comprehension, and specifically this chart. And I think there's a good question of where am I on this chart, right? And they also have these levels. And so, kind of have a little bit of a Dunning-Kruger kind of bump right there. And I would say, I think we're actually around here. I'd say we're actually around here. We're on the kind of, we're past this curve. Because and I'll talk about this. I wrote, in my notes, different things to talk about, but I feel really good these days with my immersion. Like, I feel like I can really, really follow along with content. I can understand content. And obviously, I'm nowhere close to understanding all of it or most of it, but I would say a really solid amount. And so that's why I think we're past here. So if we look at the different levels, we're definitely not at 0, right? I think we're past here. Some of the stuff I listen to is like bits and pieces. I would say most of it is like gist, and I would say for specific content, we're at story. So I would say when I think about like some of the web dramas I've been watching, I would say kind of most of the, I'd say actually story is pretty good. I've been watching this new web drama called, I made actually a spreadsheet of these. I can share this if you guys are interested, called One Fine Week. Okay, this one was so good. This one was so good. Really good. And I watched this with basically no English subs, and I just understood it all. And there were some conversations which I didn't get, but I really was able to fully enjoy the story just through Korean, which is great. At the end of this article, they talk about. Am I on the right page? Let's see. Well, I wrote somewhere. It's okay. We're not going to worry about it. Basically, I think with where I'm at in kind of the refold guide, I think we are here. Level up. Okay. You're ready to move out to 2B when you have level 3 comprehension of reading an episode while reading an episode of a TV show. I think that should be watching. Should be an episode you've never seen before, part of a series you've been watching. Recognize 50% of the words being used. So I would say I am here with these web dramas, which is really good to feel like. I'm at 2B. Woo! That's exciting. That's exciting. I think this discussion of domains is also really important. And if you this is like the gist of it, where there's, a million words in English, but the first Harry Potter contains only 6,000. The first 10 episodes of Pokemon contain 1,700. I think I remember the first episode of Best Mistake contains like less than 500 words. And so, keeping your domain small is important. I would say the domain I'm really focused on right now is like slice of life, and specifically like web dramas, which is like a school and like at a cafe and with your friends, and K-pop variety content, which is kind of like doing day-to-day activities. So that's my domain that I'm focused on right now. Another interesting thing that's come up this month is kind of my relationship with English subs. So I've had there was this one episode. I got into a new group this month. Where is it? I think I lost that link. But anyways, there's this new group I really like called QWER. And there was this video, and I think this was the first video of them I'd ever watched. I literally like didn't even know who they were when they were watching it. I was just watching it because it was like on the same channel as the Dex interviews. And this video, I'd listened to this video at least like 3 or 4 times and probably didn't understand any of it. And then I watched it once with English subs, and I would listen back, and like suddenly it all made sense. Like I could like follow along with the conversation. And so that's interesting. I think at the end of the day, subs are cheating. And I was rewatching some of the old videos. I've said this like twice or 3 times now. But you really are not going to get far if you're really leaning on English subs a lot. It's just a crutch. And I also think that use the fact that you want to watch English subs as motivation, right? The fact that you want to use English subs shows that you care about understanding what they're saying. And so use the fact that you care to understand what they're saying to like actually take the time to, take that sentence and throw it in Murine and break down every word in that sentence and figure it out, right? So if you're gonna like try to not like just go past it, right? If you want to figure out what it's saying, don't cheat, right? Take that as an opportunity to learn, or at least like recognize the words and the grammar structures in that sentence. And so I wrote, subs are never going to get you very far. And in fact, they're representative of the wrong attitude. And I actually think that's a bit of an overstatement. I think like, especially in the beginning, like English subs have a place with keeping you engaged. I think there was this one Stephen Krashen thing where like your engagement and enjoyment of your immersion content is like almost as important as the amount of immersion you're doing, right? If you're doing like 2 hours, but you're like barely paying attention, what's the point? And so if sometimes it takes you a couple English subs to really like know what's going on, it's worth it, right? Like I find I've been watching Island 2 recently. It's this like survival show, and I'll turn on the subs when they're basically like explaining the rules of the next stage. And I could like break down those words, but when I'm watching, like it would take like 5 minutes to do that, and I just want to keep watching, and by turning on English subs I can be like, okay, this is like what's happening, these are the rules, this is what they got to do, and then I can watch like the next 20, 30, 40 minutes fully engaged because like I understand the conditions and the stakes, right? And the other thing I talk about is I have a Korean friend, and they were telling me how when they were learning English, and their English was very good, their favorite show was Stranger Things, and they love Stranger Things. And they would like memorize the Stranger Things scripts. And that's what I'm saying, where like if you really care about this content that you're watching, which is why you're learning the language, right? Use that to really use as a learning opportunity. I think one of the things, and they talk about this with the monolingual transition. And this is kind of as you progress through stage 2B. There's like a casual and a structured. And so what the monolingual transition is, if you don't know, is kind of switching from a Korean English dictionary to a Korean to Korean dictionary. And I think that's something that's kind of difficult to do all at once, which is why they kind of have a casual and a structured. And but I think it's definitely something where just like you want to get rid of English subs, you want to get rid of English definitions at some point. So I had wrote in my notes that I wanted to have this like rule, no English subs, and I was thinking maybe a rule where like I could do English subs if I watched in Korean first and then after, and I made myself do like an additional 30 minutes of reading. But then I felt like you kind of like, if you're premeditated in your head that I'm going to watch this back with English subs, you're like not really trying, right? You're like, let's say you're like, okay, I'm going to watch this segment. I'm going to watch this minute, and then I'm going to watch it back with English. I'm going to watch it back with Korean again. That first time you're watching it, because you already know you're going to watch it in English and understand all of it, you're like, I feel like it kind of subconsciously takes away from your comprehension. Where if you're like, I'm only watching this in Korean, so I better try my fucking best to understand, then you're going to be locked in, right? And there's also the kind of like mental weight of I don't know where I'm going. I'm just going to keep talking. Okay. I wrote, the people that end up fluent are the ones that are going to push through and just raw dog it and learn no matter what because they want to learn. So like I was saying, my friend who memorized all of Stranger Things, like that's the kind of like mindset and dedication that it takes to become really high leveled in a foreign language. And I believe that, right? And if you're casually kind of cheating, and again, near the beginning, it's okay. But like as we start to get more advanced and we're at a year, like we're pretty serious. If you're still using those crutches, like that's just not, you're not going to make it that far. So, thoughts on English stuff. I talk a bit more about this later. I'm just going to keep going through my notes in order. The next thing, there was this video, I couldn't find it, but one of the members of QWER she was in a J-pop group, and I was watching this video of her like last J-pop concert, and it's in Japanese, right? And so there's Korean subtitles on the video and auto-translated English subtitles. And I realized and I originally put on the auto-translated English subs because like it was in Japanese, like I just like, right? And I realized I understood more reading the Korean subs than the auto-translated English subs. That was pretty cool. I was like, wow, you know. So on the topic of QWER, a little motivation goes a long way. So I really got into this group this month. Like I bought all their albums. I love their music. It's really fun. And I watch like a ton of QWER content. Like they have, you know, all the K-pop groups have tons of content, interviews, variety shows, you know, all this stuff. And so just kind of like with New Jeans back in the day, I think a little motivation can really help with the immersion. The next thing I started doing was I saw this video. It is this podcast called Didis Korean Podcast. And I specifically watched the episode on this one. So this Korean conversation with John. So this guy, John, his Korean is legit. Okay. This guy sounds incredible. I asked some of my Korean friends. They're like, he sounds like a native. Okay. This guy is awesome. And, you know, it's kind of like if you watch some of the Matt vs. Japan videos, he like asked his friends, Japanese friends about Katsumoto and if he sounded like a native. And that's how you know you can kind of trust what they're saying, right? Because they've done it, right? And so even if it's not the most optimal way, they did manage to do it. This guy, he'd been studying for, I think, 8 years. But yeah, this guy was awesome. Very, very well spoken. I think some of this stuff he was saying is pretty typical, right? Unsurprisingly, a shit ton of hours leads to results. One of the things he said was everyone wants to sound like a native, but no one wants to put in the hours, right? No shit. I think he also talked about kind of the sooner you can get rid of English in your Korean, the faster you'll learn. Of course, makes sense. He recommended passive listening to previously immersed content. That's something I had been working on with kind of... I've done that in the past. I haven't like really kind of dedicated myself to it. I think with like the web dramas, there's like condensed audio, and I never really tried that before, but I downloaded some to try this month. But the reason I haven't actually been doing that is because I've been listening to this podcast, Didis podcast. I'd listened to a couple other podcasts in the past. The reason I liked this one was because the topics are really interesting. Like they're Korean culture topics, which are all things that like I want to learn about, right? Like, of course, if you're studying Korean, you really want to understand the culture. And so there's this interesting stuff about like, dating in Korea and proverbs and hagwon and holidays and formalities and food and yeah, very interesting stuff. And I've found with these podcasts, they're like the perfect level for me. I feel like I understand them, not like obviously there's still a lot of times I like actually don't understand. But I've definitely I'll listen to these in the car and I will learn new information from listening to this podcast, which is really cool, right? To understand that much. And also to have a topic that you're interested in where it's interesting to learn. So these have been really, really good. I've been listening to them in the car every day. And I think she's a very good speaker. There's subtitles in the videos. But I just listen to the podcast. But yeah, interesting topics, really good level for me, and I'm actually learning things which I want to learn about through that. So I found that this has been good in terms of listening. And then the last takeaway from John was he said absolute rule for choosing content is what you want to engage in. Which again, all stuff we've kind of heard before, but just makes sense. I wrote, all this coincides really well with me finally being able to handle full Korean at this point around a year in. So that was kind of like with getting really into QWER, right, and watching all this content. Like at the same time as that, we're like a year in, and I really feel like my comprehension has started to like be in the place where I can have fun in the language and understand content enough where, of course there's a lot to learn, but like I can engage with content really, right? Like not just forcing myself to, but really engaging with it. I tried going full English free for a bit. And I set up, my dictionary apps to be just Korean to Korean, using translation only as the last step. I think there were two things that came up. One is the time, right? Like sometimes when you're immersing, you just want to look up a word and just like very quickly and then just keep going. But like if you're like using Korean to Korean, like sometimes like finding a definition can be like 5 minutes, because what happens is like I still don't know that many words, and also like the dictionary is kind of like its own domain, and it's like very different words than are kind of regularly used. But like it takes a while, because sometimes what I would do is I'd go to the dictionary and then I would take the definition and put it into Mirane. And I think Mirane is interesting. I use Mirane a lot these days. And if you guys don't know what Mirane is, it's like kind of breaks down sentences. What I find interesting about Mirane is it helps you like parse the grammar structures, and also very quickly gives you like the definitions for every word in a sentence. You don't have to like look them all up separately. And so I find it very helpful. With the Korean to Korean, what I find would happen is because I don't know enough words, you basically just like recursively keep going through words until you kind of hit something you know. So this was an example I brought up, which is didis, right? And so the second definition, this one was basically too long. I'll go to the second definition, right? 갑자기 오르다. And so I'm like, okay, well, I know this word. What's 오르다? Okay. And it says, 가기 위해 움직이다. Okay. So I know what that means. It's like to move, to go somewhere. Okay. And so this is like suddenly move to go somewhere. And okay, didis, you have like a rough definition, but it's very obscure. I think it's very like every time you kind of like have to look up a word in a definition, like it's like very cloudy, right? And you can't really get the nuance. But I think what's interesting is that you're really not supposed to get the nuance from the dictionary. And so there's this example that I was watching in this Matt versus Japan video, which is this video, the rule of the SRS video. And he talks about hit versus smack. Hit versus smack. So those have like very different kind of connotations in English, right? To hit someone versus smack someone. But if you look up the definitions, right, they're probably going to be pretty similar, right? Like to strike someone. You can't like get across the nuance of hit versus smack through the dictionary. You can get across the general meaning, right? And so that you'll kind of understand it in a sentence if it comes up. And that's what the dictionary is for. The dictionary isn't for the nuance. It's for just like helping you get a foothold with the word so that in your immersion, you can see the nuance, right? And so Matt talks about how once you kind of have a general understanding of the word, and then you see it in context 100 plus times in your immersion, and then you're able to really acquire that word. So something interesting to think about. Another thing I worked on this month was filling my crippling TikTok addiction, my crippling TikTok addiction with YouTube Shorts, Korean YouTube Shorts. So on my Korean YouTube channel, I just go to Shorts, and there were actually a lot of English Shorts. I had to like not interested them, but now I have set like a hard time limit of 30 minutes of TikTok per day for myself, and after that, I tried to just go to the Korean Shorts because you still get that like dopamine rush, but now that counts as immersion, right? Another interesting thing that I wrote about was the Unche Stargi. The latest episode of this, the Islet one with Chimin, I watched this and I wrote that like the first 5 minutes of this, I like basically fully understood. So that was cool. I talking about listening. So again, I'd been doing a lot of listening to Didis podcast, which I think is helpful because it's a good level for me. I had talked in the past about how when you listen to stuff that's too hard, you actually like just space out. And so listening to stuff that's either at a good level or that you've watched before can really help keep you accountable because especially with like a video, like when I would rewatch that the Fridge interview, like I'd watch this in English subs, but like even if you had just watched like a drama before, like basically everything they're saying. And so you can kind of even if you start to space out, they're like these like hooks of like sentences or words or like moments that you're like, oh, I know what's going on here. I can engage again. And so that can kind of help make sure you're more fully engaged. Next up, I talked about I think I already talked about that with subtitles of like keeping you engaged. It can sometimes be worth it. The next thing was there's this for QWR. There's this series. It's like the docu-series of them like making the group basically. And of course, I really like the group. I really want to watch the series, but I've not watched it yet. I've watched like the first episode because I knew this was something I really want to watch. And so because this was something I really care about, I was like, I'm not going to give in and English subs this, right? If I really care about this, I'm going to break down like every sentence. And so my plan was to watch the first time just free flow, just go through it. And the second time go through, basically break down every word by word that I didn't know. And the third time free flow again and then listen the next day. So I have really, free flowed this first episode and then only got to like 3 minutes in with the like word by word breakdown. And that was like last week. I kind of just like stopped doing it. I don't know what happened, but the first like 3 minutes of breaking down took like 20 minutes because you're looking up like every sentence and people talk like a lot. I would say before I did that, like the first time my understanding was maybe 25 to 30%, and that improved to like 75 to 80% on the first rewatch of those like first 3 minutes after looking everything up. And I wrote that the care about strat is effective, right? Like it's kind of like hard to look everything up and go really slowly and methodically through a piece of content if you don't like actually like are really, really interested in understanding what they have to say. On grammar, so I haven't done like any formal grammar stuff in a while. Basically what happens is if there's a grammar thing that I don't know, like a grammar form I haven't seen, which is not a lot of them, when I put it through Mirane, basically it will be like, this is a form and this is like generally what it means. And that's all I really kind of do. I really never feel like grammar is a limiting factor for me anymore. It's almost always vocabulary. Like obviously there's a lot of grammar I don't know, but just not kind of coming up in the kind of content I watch. Like I understand the grammar structure of most sentences. On Anki, of course we stopped Anki a while ago. I had kind of been rewatching some of the past videos and I actually had brought this up before, but in the SRS video, Matt talks about how not using Anki is a totally valid way to learn. Probably not the most optimal or the most efficient, but if you don't like Anki, which I found it very challenging for me, I think it definitely is a valid way to learn. Now, at the end of the video, Matt talks about how the initial boost from SRS to make target language content approachable is the big win, which is 100% true. And I totally agree with that. Like the first 1,000 words through Anki were great. Like that big hump at the start is really, really important. But now I'm past that point. And basically, it's all about immersion hours. Really, that's it. It's all about how many hours can I put in. And so the quality and quantity of my active immersion is just all there is left to optimize at this point. On web dramas, so of course I made this spreadsheet. I had watched Best Mistake like back in like the summer. I rewatched it recently and like my comprehension wasn't as good as I kind of thought it would be. but it was still like strong. The thing with web dramas is that they're very easy, they're very simple. One really solid domain. They are really fun. Except for there was this one, this My World of 17. This one I could not watch. Like it was really hard to watch. What I've been doing to find some of these is going off of Cloudy Howdy's tier list video. But yeah, this One Fine Week one, I watched this in like a day. Like it was really enjoyable. I've also been trying to do reading again. I think what's interesting about reading is again, like this, I was looking, this like book, I started reading like probably like 10 months ago, and I reread it again just this past month. And I understood most of the words, but yeah, I still like, there were a couple I didn't know. And then I've been working my way through Yonsei again, which I was working through like back in August. And also again, like if you look at the retro path, you know, you do this like month 1. But I think what was interesting to me about reading again was obviously my level and comprehension has improved a lot, and I found the reading to be much more enjoyable. I think the kind of the threshold for not getting bored out of your mind in terms of percent understanding with reading is a lot higher than with videos, right? With videos, there's a lot more going on. It's visual. It just kind of keeps playing. You know, there's like people and stuff you're interested about. That's why you're watching the video. But with reading, like if you only understand like 50%, like it's really dry. It's really rough. And so now that these kind of stories are up at like the 70, 80%, it's really a lot more enjoyable to reading, and I've been going through these much quicker as well. So I went through like half of Yonsei in a day. I really need to finish this, and then I totally kind of see myself really going through 2 and 3 in the next month, hopefully. I went through the entire refold guide again. I read through all of stage 1, all of stage 2, all of stage 3. I wrote, I feel a little bit overwhelmed. I wrote, I'm behind, but I don't actually think I'm too behind. Like I said, I'm in 2B, which I think is like a pretty good place to be for 1 year. If you look at the retro chart, I think I'm pretty behind. But you know, I feel good. And I think it's really just about, you know, what's next. So, increasing difficulty in mastering a domain. So obviously, the other thing, actually, I'm going to talk about that in a sec, but I forgot where it was. But at this stage, Refold kind of talks about how their bare minimum is 2 hours a day, which feels like a lot, but I think I've kind of been hitting that. I don't know about every day, but it's like 40 minutes of listening in the car, and I find that, like, you know, I'm on like the shorts for at least like 15 to 20 minutes. And I watch like a couple videos every day, and it really doesn't feel like a chore anymore. Like it's just like what I do. I just like watch, like whenever I have nothing to do, I just like open my Korean YouTube channel. This is another interesting thing that came up. I kind of skipped over. In this book, The Easy Korean Reading for Beginners, there's like a handwritten version of the story and then like a typed version of the story. And I would always read the typed version because I found this really hard to read a year ago. But now, actually, I misspoke. Not this part. This actually was hard to read. But the really hard part to read was these comics where they write like super small. And maybe I can find a good example. Yeah, like this text is really small, or it will be kind of like squished and stuff. And I would basically not even try to read these because most of like I didn't know the words and it was kind of hard to read. But when I went back and read this, like I could read and understand all these comics, which felt really cool. What is next? What's kept me motivated? You know, I think at the start we were kind of unsure or I was kind of unsure if I would make it a full year. And obviously we did. So I think what's kept me motivated is, one, I think you can't not mention the K-pop, right? I think I'm still pretty into it. I don't think I'm as into it as I was like a year ago, but I'm still very into it. I follow the content. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Reddit. I just bought some more albums, and it's really fun. It's something I really enjoy, and I enjoy the content. I think I also, at this point, I think just like the fact that I'm in so far is a big motivation, right? It feels like wow, I've been doing it for a year. I've really like made very, very tangible progress. The immersion gets like easier because I've like put in so much work, and so we can keep doing it. I think another thing that's motivating me is in college, I really want to study abroad in Korea. And obviously, if you're going to be there and you really want to know Korean, so um, that's great. 1 year. So this is my final assessment for 1 year. I wanted to compare to my beginning goals. So I pulled up my beginning one, and I kind of talked about this chart. And I had wrote that I wanted to reach this point, which I called the fun point. And the fun point was basically where you can comfortably or like moderately understand content and the language becomes, quote, fun. And I said, I'm not even thinking about this fluency grind. I just want to turn incomprehension into ambiguity and at least give it a good shot. And I am very proud to say I think we hit that. And in the beginning, I had said I think that's like about a year, pretty reasonable to do in a year. And obviously, I had like a month or two where I'd kind of quit and my immersion hadn't really been very consistent. And I kind of like dropped the anki and the reading and the grammar along the way. But I'm serious. I think we made it. I really do, which feels great to say. And also I think we hit the goal. In terms of refold, I think we're at 2B. I think we're at, with the levels of comprehension, I would say we're at like 3 to 4 for most content, and with 4 for some. And so I have a solid foothold in the language to continue to immerse enjoyably. So what are my goals or my plan for the next year? Just continuing the consistent immersion. The goal would be to reach level 5 comprehension. And that's what Refold says. You're ready to move up to stage 2 when you have level 5 comprehension of slice of life TV shows. And so I think that's just going to take just watching more, same stuff, just listening every day to the podcast and watching more web dramas and more content and just doing that for basically another year. And I really think we can hit that. I definitely want to begin the monolingual transition, right? I had kind of like looked at it for a bit and kind of walked it back. I would say over time, I want to start trying to look at the Korean dictionary before the English dictionary, and then over time, fully adopting the Korean dictionary. And then the last thing, of course, to think about is as we approach 2 years, is preparing to output. So there was this comment that I saw on one of my videos, the YouTube comment, said almost all the initial Korean immersion in YouTube fell off to the speaking aspect of the language. So I'm curious if I'm going to run into the same issue. So in terms of output, I believe Refold when they say that you really can't speak without level 5 to 6 understanding. And it's very domain focused, right? Like if you haven't reached level 5, 6 understanding in a specific domain, you're not going to be able to really speak well in that domain. And I am serious, I believe them. And I know there's like a big output fear in the immersion learning community. I know in like the Discord, they recently like made like Korean only days, but I'm serious. That's where I want to be. I want to be at like a high level 5, level 6 with that kind of content before I start immersing. The big thing is finding a parent. So if you don't know what a parent is, it's basically like a person who speaks your target language, who's around your age and your gender, and they have a lot of content you can listen to, and you basically just do what's called shadowing, which is you like put on their content and you like just like repeat everything they say in exactly the way they say it. And I was watching a video of Matt doing that. Let me see if I can. Maybe it's in here. I can't find it. But, in order to do that well, like you have to understand everything they're saying. Like you have to have the level 6, like complete automatic comprehension of what they're saying. And so I think that's the prereq. But I also think that that's quite an easy way to get started with output. Like when I think about how I want to start output, everyone says like starting to like write. Writing can be a lot more approachable than speaking. You have more time. You don't have to worry about pronunciation. So I think starting like texting with my friends as I approach that level of comprehension. But also I think with shadowing is kind of like, I think a good way to gradually approach speaking. Because if you just start shadowing a bunch, you get to work on just like the speaking itself, like the physicalness of speaking, like making the pronunciation. And in that moment, like that's when you have all the time to really like put on headphones and listen to like the nuance and the articulation of your parent and try to sound like every bit like them. And also you just practice like saying things and the phrases and the and conversations just like your parent is doing. And so I think that's kind of where I see it going, where I start when I decide to start outputting, starting with writing and texting, and starting with a lot of shadowing, and then slowly working up to speaking. So, yeah, I think it's okay for goals to change. Specifically, see Anki, right? Like Anki, I did for 200 days, and then I quit, and I think it all worked out. And so that's really where we're at now. It's been a great year. Feels crazy that it's been a year. I was watching back this first video and I really couldn't believe it. But I've really enjoyed this adventure, and I'm really excited to continue. And I guess I would say around 2 years is when I would expect to be ready to start outputting. But of course, everyone goes at a different pace. So, we'll see next year, hopefully, if we're still making videos, where I'm at. I want to, of course, thank you all for watching and continuing. Your comments on all these videos have been really supportive and appreciative. And it's been really a pleasure to document my journey. And I hope that just like I watched other people's channels and was motivated and found them really helpful, that you'll find these videos inspiring or useful in any way, or maybe just interesting. And I've been talking forever. I think that's really all I got. But 1 year, guys, 1 year we did it. So I'll see you back in a month for month 13. And again, thank you so much for watching. And I'll catch you next time. Peace.